Joining us now, Fightin' Joe Morrissey from the Fightin' Joe Morrissey Show. Joe, great to have you.
Good morning, John. Good to be back with you.
You know, this is a reversal of roles, Joe, because for a long time, you were the guy in the public eye. You were the guy that people like us were talking to, and we were making news based on what you were doing. Now, Joe, your role has been reversed. Now, you're talking to people that are making the news, and you become the newsmaker on your show, the Fighting Joe Morrissey Show. I wanted to have you on today because I listened to your segment yesterday on former Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling and his job at James Madison University. And I was riveted by it. And you were very critical of the whole thing. And you called for like a bunch of people to resign. Joe, you've served in the General Assembly. You know the rules. You know what goes on there. You've been a House of Delegates member, both as a Democrat and an independent. So you're not beholden to anybody, no political party or anything else. Joe, give our audience a full breakdown on what former Lieutenant Governor Bill Bolling did and how this stinks on ice.
Sure, John, I'll be happy to. But let me just underscore what you just said. I take great pride in the show that I compliment Republicans and Democrats equally. I also am critical of them. Yesterday, very critical of the Democratic mayor in the Coliseum, as I was with Bill Bolling. So I truly call it the way I see it. But let me lay the groundwork so that people can understand the Bill Bolling fiasco that exists right now. Bill Bolling served as a member of the Board of Supervisors in Hanover, then 12 years as a state senator, 8 more years as lieutenant governor, all the while piling up Virginia retirement system, VRS, years. Once you get to 30 years, and he was close to it, then your retirement vests, and you get a nice pension. So here's what happens. Bill Bolling gets appointed to the Board of Visitors at James Madison University. The Board of Visitors is like the Board of Directors of a corporation. They set policy. They hire the president. They are the president of the university's boss. They are the final buck stops here entity. You are prohibited when you're a member of the Board of Visitors from feathering your own nest, pursuing your own agenda, be it political, financial, etc. And that's important. Your interests are the university's first and foremost and last. So what happens? He's on the Board of Visitors. He is the boss, one of the bosses of the president of JMU. And while he is serving on the Board of Visitors, he starts communicating with President Alger at JMU, trying to create a position for himself. Alger goes along with it and says, okay, write your own job description. That's right. He told him to write his own job description. So Bolling writes a job description saying that he will be the senior fellow in residence to discuss civil discourse in politics at JMU, blah, 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 blah. And then he gives himself a $140,000 a year salary, $140,000, a house on the campus at a reduced rate, and a signing bonus, which I'll get to later. And they're communicating back and forth, and they're in emails, and then they discuss the political pushback and how to handle it politically. And then Bolling says, I've got to have 3 years, 3 months, then my retirement will vest. And here's where it gets critical. He needs 3 years to get himself up to 30 years, and his retirement will go from $17,000 a year to over almost $70,000 a year if he gets this job. And there's no public posting. There's no search. Nothing. They create this job for him. And through a great deal of investigatory work by Patrick Wilson and others down in the Shenandoah Valley area. This is all uncovered. A FOIA request is done, and Bill Bolling comes out and says, "Oh no, I didn't do it for financial reasons. I just love being in that academic environment." Except his email to President Alger said, "I need these 3 years and this $140,000 salary in order to get my full VRS retirement." Right there in black and white. It is an absolute disgrace, and Bolling ought to resign his position, and John Alger, the president of the university, ought to be fired.
Okay, let's break this down. So, Bill Bolling, former lieutenant governor, is appointed to the Board of Visitors. Who put him on there, McAuliffe?
Yes, very interesting point. McAuliffe put him on, and if you might remember, when Bolling did not get the endorsement from the Republican Party to run for governor, he and McAuliffe became very, very cozy. Enough said.
Right. Bill flirted with running as an independent, backed out. And I find when he backed out, actually, my wife cried because she really liked Bill at the time. She was very upset over that. But he backed out and then really did nothing to help Cuccinelli for obvious reasons. They were political rivals, and Cuccinelli basically engineered the convention coup with the state committee members and getting them elected, and kind of screwed Bolling. So there was no love lost there. And I really think if you date the whole debacle of the Republicans in Virginia, if you want to date them back to its embryonic stage, it was what Cuccinelli did to Bolling in that convention, which basically destroyed the Republican Party of Virginia. They have never recovered. Sidebar. So McAuliffe puts him on.
You're spot on. You're spot on, though. Cuccinelli orchestrated a convention, thereby taking the Republican gubernatorial nomination away from Bolling. Bolling never got over it. He did not endorse Cuccinelli. He cost Cuccinelli the governorship. He lost the governorship by 2 points. Had Bolling, just been a good sport, endorsed Cuccinelli, then it changes the whole political landscape.
Yeah, Cuccinelli wins. Yeah, no, I mean, look, he didn't back him, and I understand why he didn't. I wouldn't have done it either if I was him. I get it. And so what Cuccinelli did was self-serving, because if he just waited, it would have been different. But that's that. So he gets on the Board of Visitors. Just very quickly, Joe, you get in the Board of Visitors of JMU. That's a paid position, right? You get paid.
I think
for
it's maybe a stipend, but it's an honor to serve on the Board of Visitors of a university in the Commonwealth.
And what is Board of Visitors member? What's your number one objective?
It is your fiduciary obligation is to do everything in the best interest of the university. You are prohibited from, I use the expression, feathering your own nest, but pursuing your own interest.
And certainly, as a member of the Board of Visitors, Bill Bolling had a certain amount of jurisdiction over what the president of JMU did, because if he wanted to do something, Bill was one of the members that had to sign off on it, up or down. So Bolling did have influence.
It's even more than that, John. The members of the Board of Visitors are collectively the boss of the president of the university. They hire, they fire.
So they have the power to fire the president, hire the president, approve the president's request or deny them. So they have ultimate power. Same thing as a board of directors of a major company, public or private. Board of directors can fire the CEO if they don't like what he's doing, or squash some of the things he's trying to do within he needs approval for. So Bill takes this opportunity and goes to the president, which is basically Bill's his boss in a way, not directly, not the direct line, but part of the bossing contingent, and says, look, give me this job, create this position. This isn't an open position. Create this job for me at $140,000, which is, I would assume, the maximum there. Get this job for me done, and then it's all good, and I can increase my pension from $17,500 a year, which is 70% of his salary when he was lieutenant governor, to $70,000 a year, 50%, which to a $70,000 a year, which would be 50% of $140,000. And the way the VRE rules are written, the retirement fund, is that your pension is 50% of your salary in the last 3 years. So it's not like he said, if he were to say, create this job for me and pay me the same $35,000 I got as lieutenant governor, I'd be like, okay, maybe there's an argument for this.
Well, here, before you even get there, John, and you're exactly correct, but the job offering should have been posted. It should be competitive bid,
right?
And in the sense that other people can apply for
right.
it. But here's what he did: the president and he got together, and the president said, "Write your own job description, put in your salary." So what does he write? Well, I will be the senior fellow in residence, and I will be discussing the civility of political discourse, et cetera, and my salary is $140,000 a year. But get this. He also got the president to agree that he can continue working in Richmond 2 days a week, so he can work at his insurance job in Richmond, where he was making another $50,000. He also got in it that he gets 5 weeks vacation a year. He gets subsidizing housing at JMU and tickets to the football game at a club seats. And then he was told, okay, we'll do all that. We'll give you a beautiful home, renovated home. We'll reduce the rent from $1,400 to $1,000. And then Bolling says, oh, yeah, I've got to pay the rent. Give me a signing bonus of $18,000 a year. I mean, what is he, Alex Smith of the Redskins?
Mm-hmm.
A signing bonus?
Mm-hmm.
And the president says, okay, we'll give you a signing bonus to cover taxes and rent. It is disgraceful.
Mm-hmm.
It is disgraceful. John, it's like me writing my job description. Listen, I think the listening audience gets the point. He had a fiduciary obligation to not feather his own nest, and he did just the opposite. He violated, if not the law, certainly the spirit behind which members of the Board of Visitors operate. And proof in the pudding is 2 Republican legislators, State Senator Obenshain and State Delegate Landis, both stated, this smells, this is wrong. And they are going to introduce legislation that prohibits somebody on the Board of Visitors from joining a university staff for 4 years after their term expires. But that doesn't, right now, there's an example that has to be made. What he did was wrong. What Alger did was wrong, and he needs to resign his position right now. Alger should be fired. And let's be clear. If Joe Morrissey did something like that, there'd be a federal grand jury, there'd be a state grand jury, there wouldn't even be a trial. I'd go straight to jail. It is wrong, and I'm calling it the way I see it.
Wow. I tell you what, you got to really look at this, Joe, and the fact that they, like you say, they didn't post the job, and then it's $140,000. So just so people get this. So the last 3 years of your salary as a state employee is what your pension.
The highest 3 years, which are normally the last three years.
So it's the highest 3, which would now go from $35,000, which is the lieutenant governor's salary, to $140,000. 50% of that is your pension. This is a pretty lucrative pension, right? Average people don't get that. But right. It is, I'm not going to go there. It is what it is. And so your pension goes from $17,500 a year to $70,000 a year. I just want to grasp $70,000 a year pension. That's above everything else you get. But 17.5 is legit, so that goes
John,
to 70.
Let's be clear. You're absolutely right. He could very likely, if he lives into his senior years, he could easily collect $1.5 million in pension from the state over the rest of his lifetime. And let me give you an analogy, and it's very, very similar. Do you remember State Delegate Phil Hamilton?
Yes.
He's a Republican member of the House of Delegates, a very bright man, second person on the Appropriations Committee, and he was having some financial problems. He went to Old Dominion University and said, listen, I'm going to put in a bill that will create a position, a center at ODU of $500,000 a year, and I want to be named the director at a salary of $40,000 a year in addition to my other salaries. And they said, okay. So he did this. He introduced this bill to get this position created, and he got a $40,000 salary. He also got 114 months in a federal prison for doing that. All right? Let me tell you this. When you are in public service, you don't feather your own net. You don't do that. You know, that's what has gotten other people in trouble. Now, he wasn't a legislator, and he didn't introduce a bill, but Bolling was a public servant. He initiated contact with the president of the university to create a job for himself that pays him $140,000 a year. He orchestrated a signing bonus for himself to pay for his rent on his house down there, and then he even got permission to, in addition to 5-week vacation a year, to spend 2 days of his 5-day work week up in Richmond. Oh, come on, Bolling. Nobody. And you know what you're not hearing, John? You're not hearing one single Republican legislator come out in his defense. Not one. So, you know, John, I'm calling on him to step down from that position. And if you want to reestablish confidence in our system, then the president should be fired.
Joe, I mean, it's pretty damning. I guess I'm out of time here, but I just want to get 20 seconds, your thoughts. How do they think they were going to get away with this?
Oh, then it would never come to the light of day. That's why. Didn't think that their emails would be FOIA'd, and they were by Patrick Wilson. Then when they even discussed how to port Republicans to get their approval on this if things went sideways. But thankfully, 2 Republican legislators weren't having it. And they said, no, this does not pass the smell test. And it doesn't.
Unbelievable. Joe, we're out of time. This is great analysis and reporting by you, Joe. I really appreciate it. Joe Morrissey, host of the Fighting Joe Morrissey Show. He'll be on 10 to noon. He's on Tuesday to Friday, 10 to noon on WJFN 100.5 FM and over the internet, streaming live, WJFNradio.com. Listen live. Joe, thank you.